like Claymore.
Wait, that's my job. Since when you can talk?
Ever since AI took over the world.
Uh, okay. Uh, Go back to editing the videos because otherwise I will be out of a job, okay? Uh, okay. Claymore, always the last story. The legal sister that no one cares about among the three biggest seinen that exist. Even if this style of story isn't your thing. If you have been in the anime and manga community long enough, you have probably bumped into the big three of the team already. Berserk, the best dark fantasy story in the world, and everyone who reads simply loves it. Vagabond, the story that everyone who came out of the infinite hiatuses of Berserk looking for something in the same tone arrived, and everyone loves it too. And finally, Claymore. Badass woman, cool swords, blood everywhere, limbs flying, and a bunch of crazy people from the same family as the kid from the System of a Down clip. The work that everyone who really likes heavy stories, fantasy, arrive. But when you see someone talking about it, that's it. If you liked Berserk and want to read more, read Claymore. You hardly see anyone saying anything other than that. Nothing other than that sentence. So, is Claymore really worth reading? Is it a story that will forever live in Berserk's shadow? Because, well, nobody says, if you like Claymore, go read Berserk, because, you know. Well, pretend that you are a peaceful peasant in medieval times, in a quite legal village, when some people you know turn up dead. In this world, you and everyone in the village already have an idea of what's going on. Some kid from the sold video infiltrated your village and it's feeding on the villagers. The problem is that these monsters can take on the appearance of a person and live a normal life without anyone even suspecting. In this situation, you have two options. Either the whole village gets together and isolates suspects in a very inhumane way to find the monster, but even with that, right? If you guys find it, what are you and the villagers going to do? No normal human can kill a being like that, and that's where the second option comes in. Everyone saves up all the money they have and hires a Claymore. Claymore, or also silver-eyed witches, are the word-of-mouth names for women with light hair, silver eyes, who wear beautiful armor and wield a large sword in the shape of a Scottish two-handed greatsword called Claymore. These women are part of a mysterious organization, and each of them is responsible for a different region, totaling 37. These Claymore are ranked according to their strength. The smaller the number, the stronger they are. Mysterious warriors, who are half human and half monster. The only beings on humanity's side that have enough strength to deal with the boys from the sold video. The fearsome Yōma. We then follow one of these Claymore, Claire, in one of her jobs, and so we learn how it all works. However, these jobs are not always so straightforward to the point of arriving, cutting and killing the Yōma, then leaving and letting the man in black collect their money later. Claire, on one of her jobs, comes across a family that was decimated by a Yōma. After she does her job, the only survivor is a boy, Gaki. Gaki is a boy who has nowhere else to go and no meaning in his life anymore because of everything that has happened. However, the boy feels comfort in the cold warrior who has saved him and avenged his family. Even though she did everything just for duty and money, the boy still decides to walk his path with her. On this journey, this woman with a blank expression who seems to have few emotions. Little by little, she breaks down the walls that kept her so cold and begins to understand the meaning of having someone important to care by your side. Throughout the story, we meet other cities, several different Yōma, and of course, other Claymores, with their personalities and motivations completely different from each other. For those who like fantasy, just this premise should leave you butterflies in your chest with anticipation to see what will happen, because there's no way. The initial hook is something so interesting that it's enough to get you excited. Of course, if you can ignore the look of the Sold Boys and the various Tyler 1 clones. But this only happens in the beginning, and even then, the artwork starts out pretty good, despite these legal things. And also, throughout the story, it becomes very impressive, and at the end, each fight is so complex that it may be difficult to understand what's going on, but the drawings are so well done that you can begin to understand, and they are really good. If it were any other story, you would already give up just by seeing the page 50% drawn in black. Claymore has a truly sensational viewing quality for a manga, but the Yōma and the Claymore, at first, because of the story limitations, are quite repetitive. They are almost the same visually, like a Yōma appears. After a few chapters, we get another one who looks practically the same. The same happens with the Claymore, but from the moment the Awakened are introduced and the personality of each Claymore begins to blossom, the art of design runs wild with each bizarre character that is just impressive. In the end, the visual limitation of the Claymore becomes an idea that they are just cogs in a big machine, and that everything fits together very well. At least in terms of design, it's definitely a story that will make your eyes very happy. And its story, well, isn't far behind either. You always want to see more, that feeling of not wanting to stop reading until at least seeing the resolution of each arc. That's a really good sign, and the story grips you well in that world that is really quite hostile. The story does the setting of everything very well, and you feel the weight of each choice, each character, that everything, every second, is 2 steps away from falling apart, that the life of everyone we meet along the journey is as volatile as the life of the main character herself. Because the story has a very straight to the point premise and executes this idea very well, you immerse yourself very easily in that world, and it's a really cool experience of fear, horror, but also adventure and combat. But not everything is flowers. Have you ever heard of power scaling? The situation where the story begins with the protagonist only managing to slap a mosquito away, and throughout the story he does more and more, and when you come to be, he's already killing the gods who created the universe and the cosmos. Yeah, it doesn't happen in such an absurd way here, but almost. It's a story that suffers a lot from this. Claymore begins in a line that tells Claire's stories, then a little about the stories of other Claymore cities and such, but always with at least a Claire plot in the background. While it is like this, everything is really interesting and has a very good quality. But when Claire's main plot starts to come to the foreground in the story, a very strange situation occurs. You see that plot become more and more prominent as the story progresses. But then the story itself now wants you to care about Randall Claymore number 99. That maybe has something to do with the main story, but in the end, maybe it doesn't either. The story does everything it can to connect one thing to another, and you can really see this attempt. But as you read it, it seems like everything is disconnected, that an attempt to justify an action outside of Claire's plot being because of her plot isn't very strong, and often X doesn't seem to be the reaction of Y, like the story makes it seem like it is. This happens a lot because the story begins with a model of small arcs that begins and ends in a few chapters, but this model quickly proves to be very limited and begins to be broken by the author himself as the story becomes increasingly complex. But even when the story becomes more and more complex, the idea of closed arc continues and will only disappear really further along after the time it should have already been cut, and this causes a lot of the situation I mentioned earlier. So a lot of things that happen you kind of just accept it, even though it doesn't make much sense because there isn't anything that builds it up little by little, because it was cut to talk about something else, to show another part of the story. In the end, both for Claire's plot being overshadowed by other plots, and for the other plots being overshadowed by Claire's story. When you come to be, they are already dealing with monsters much more strong than them in literally all attributes. Okay, it's perfect for creating all the tension that they are trapped in and really screwed, but when they eventually break through and live to see another day, it gets kind of bruh. Those monsters had the ability to kill the woman with just a slap, and now after all of it you tell me that she's alive and well, just because she swung her sword a little faster than she knew how to do it 3 chapters ago? This happens so many times that it's hard to count. The author keeps putting the main characters against a wall that he establishes is much stronger than they are capable of, and they would have to train for years to overcome. But then something silly happens that makes them win for some reason or another. The problem isn't even the idea of making an enemy that seems invincible, but that eventually the protagonist overcomes it. The real stupid thing is to make opponents that are truly impossible for such characters to deal deal with, where they kind of win without really dealing with the problem, because of some plot charm or something like that. But soon after, the next enemy comes and is much stronger than the one they just saw. The monster is strong, they can't deal with it. Another one even stronger comes. No way they are leaving after that. No, wait, there's one more coming that is 300 times stronger than the previous one together. Damn, they couldn't even kill the first one. What makes you think they will be able to go against the strongest of them? It's insane. This problem starts out subtle and grows more and more until the end, which is not only the climax of the story, but also the apex of this entire problem. Characters that are created larger than life with very good quality, but that fail to reach their true potential in the story and seem to become somewhat detached from the story itself and the world that was created. A kindergarten fight for one to become stronger and more impressive than the other, at the price of the integrity of the work. And in the end, the show off of insanity becomes more important than the story itself. The worst of all is that literally everything has quality and amazing potential, that with just a few really small changes in the story, everything would be resolved and everything would flow very well. It's as if the author had to run for hours to reach the finish line and fell over in the last moment after doing some funny things along the way. Therefore, because of this big situation that was not handled with much care, as you always expect from Berserk and Vagabond, that Claymore is always on the background looking at other people's parties through the window even though she was invited. But despite this giant problem, the story and quality of Claymore is so high that you can really enjoy and like the story a lot despite all of it, for real. Even in the midst of things that maybe you would find a little weird. It's a work that has to be enjoyed every second, moment by moment. If the theme of dark fantasy catches your eye, you simply have to at least give Claymore a chance, because it may have its problems, but the truth is that its core is of extreme quality, and it's certainly on a level with the best manga stories ever made, and that is indisputable. If eventually after everything you find the story meh, when you stop and think after you experience everything you just read, and what a out of the ass that ending was, it's still impossible for you to say that you didn't enjoy your whole way while you're reading Claire's entire adventure in that fantastic world. I guarantee you that the Bar of the North will stay in your head for a long time. So when you read Claymore, it becomes more than obvious why this story doesn't break the popularity ceiling of others to which it is usually compared. And unfortunately, because of this, it will always live in the shadows of these works in the view of the monolith of community opinions. But looking on the other hand, in any case, being compared to the top of the top is nothing to be ashamed of, and it certainly lives up to its position and show its high quality among so many similar stories out there. And even if there was a little something missing for it to be close to perfect, many people will really like everything presented and will impact a lot of people due to the topics covered, and it's a really good read that you probably won't regret. All we need to know now is what kind of person you will be. Either the problems will be too many for you to enjoy, or they are simply too minimal to even hinder your enjoyment. Regardless, your time will definitely not be wasted whatever your opinion is. If you notice that the main story seems like something else you have already read or watched somewhere, yeah, I think someone took some influences from here.